union is not just a word. The union is a symbol. And we, the youth, should learn a lesson from this situation to unite, to make integration a reality.
What if the very organization created to unite a continent has instead become the reason it stays divided? In a single moment, in a single speech, a young leader dared to call out Africa's most powerful political body to its face, and he didn't whisper. He said it clearly, bluntly: the African Union is useless. Those words ricocheted across the continent like thunder, shaking palaces and parliaments, and igniting millions of conversations from the streets of Lagos to the cafes of Dakar. But why would a head of state risk saying something so politically dangerous? What truth was he trying to force into the light? And could his vision, his plan, be the one thing that finally makes African unity a reality? Let's step inside that historic moment and see why it might change Africa forever. The summit that stopped breathing. The African Union Summit had been running like clockwork. Speeches filled with polite phrases. Diplomatic smiles exchanged across tables. Delegates scrolling on their phones while waiting for the next ceremonial statement. Then, silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy. The kind that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. Every eye turned toward the young leader from Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. He wasn't here to play along. He wasn't here to flatter the room. His tone was steady. Not angry. Not pleading. Steady like a surgeon's hand. And with that voice, he cut through decades of carefully rehearsed political theater. He accused the African Union of failing its most sacred mission, to protect African nations from the storms tearing them apart. He spoke of insurgencies devouring the Sahel, foreign powers pulling the strings of African economies, and deep divisions weakening the continent's strength. And then, he said it, the AU is useless. Shockwaves beyond the walls. Some leaders stared hard at their notes, pretending to read. Others looked like the ground had shifted under them. A few nodded ever so slightly, agreeing, but unwilling to make it known. In one corner, a camera zoomed in on Traoré's face. That image would spread across every major social media platform before the day was done. Outside the conference hall, the reaction was explosive. Radio hosts dissected every word. Hashtags trended across Africa and beyond. African diaspora communities from Paris to New York organized online forums to discuss what had just happened. For decades, ordinary Africans have quietly questioned whether the AU was more than a club of elites making symbolic statements. Traoré had simply said what they'd been thinking, but with the authority and fearlessness of a sitting head of state. Why he spoke, and why now? This wasn't an emotional outburst. It was the result of years of frustration building up beneath the surface, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. In the Sahel, militant groups and armed bandits have turned entire regions into war zones. Villages burned. Schools abandoned. Millions displaced. Burkina Faso alone has over 2 million people forced from their homes. And yet, after endless meetings and action plans, the insecurity continues to grow. In Traoré's view, the AU has moved too slowly, been too cautious, and relied too much on outsiders for solutions. Worse still, Africa's economic foundation remains dangerously fragile. Many countries still export raw materials at low prices, only to import the finished goods at much higher costs, a system inherited from colonialism. In West Africa, the CFA franc remains tied to the French treasury, a symbol of lingering dependence. To Traoré, the AU should have been the engine pushing for industrialization, regional trade, and African-controlled finance. Instead, it has become comfortable issuing statements while real change stalls. Leading by doing. But Traoré didn't step onto the AU stage merely to point fingers. He came armed with proof that a different path is not only possible, but already underway. In Burkina Faso, he is driving an ambitious $8 billion transformation blueprint built on 2 pillars: self-sufficiency and sovereignty. Roads are being expanded to connect rural farmers directly to markets, turning once isolated villages into thriving economic contributors. Solar grids and microenergy networks are cutting the nation's reliance on costly imported fuels. Agriculture is being revitalized through large-scale irrigation projects, modern farming methods, and climate-resilient crops, with the bold goal of making Burkina Faso a net food exporter. Natural resources, especially gold, are now under national control, with a domestic refinery adding value before export. And with a relentless anti-corruption drive, stolen public funds are being reclaimed and redirected into schools, clinics, and agricultural hubs. Crucially, all of this is being achieved without falling into the debt traps of the IMF or World Bank. His message is clear: true independence isn't declared, it's built. From one nation to many. Traoré understands that no matter how determined, Burkina Faso cannot single-handedly withstand the political, economic, and security pressures bearing down on Africa. That's why he championed the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a bold coalition uniting Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These three nations share more than geography. They share a history of resisting foreign domination, a reality of battling violent insurgencies, and an urgent need to escape the cycle of dependency on external military powers. The AES is not a ceremonial union. It is built on action. Its joint defense pillar ensures that security is handled by African hands through shared military training programs, coordinated intelligence networks, and synchronized border patrols. The economic integration agenda is equally ambitious, focusing on harmonizing trade regulations, investing in cross-border infrastructure like roads and energy grids, and developing collective industrial projects that transform local resources into finished goods within the region. Finally, the united negotiation strategy means these countries no longer approach international trade and political agreements alone. They speak with one voice, amplifying their bargaining power on the global stage. For Traoré, the AES is more than a regional pact. It is a living experiment in sovereignty, resilience, and solidarity. It's a seed he believes can grow into something far greater: the revival of Pan-African unity, proving that when neighbors stand together, the dream of a truly self-reliant Africa moves from rhetoric to reality. The bigger dream. He envisions an Africa without colonial-era borders, a continent where invisible lines drawn by outsiders no longer dictate movement, trade, or identity. His plan calls for a single African currency to replace dependency on foreign-controlled monetary systems, freeing economies from external influence. Alongside it, he proposes one African passport, allowing citizens to travel, work, and trade freely anywhere on the continent, unlocking the full potential of a 1.4 billion-strong market. These are not empty slogans. They are strategies already being tested through regional alliances like the AES, proving that cooperation can deliver tangible results. The idea is simple yet revolutionary. Begin with neighboring nations that share common goals, build trust through real-world projects, and expand outward until the vision becomes continental reality. It's a direct challenge to the old way. No more waiting for permission, no more outsourcing Africa's destiny. The future, in his eyes, must be built by African hands, for African people. The question for Africa's future. His speech at the AU summit forced a question into the open. Will Africa choose the slow, safe diplomacy of the past? Or will it embrace bold, unapologetic leadership willing to risk comfort for progress? For Africa's youth, the choice feels urgent. They want leaders who speak uncomfortable truths, act on them, and refuse to let the continent's destiny be decided elsewhere. And in that AU hall, a 36-year-old from Burkina Faso proved that one voice, steady, sharp, and fearless, can still shake the pillars of power.